Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am in fabulous Las Vegas, where I belong at the Encore Suites at the Wynn Hotel, Casino, Resort, and Spa. This place is absolutely magnificent. Here's what I love that they're doing now in the WPT Championship events. The water is in metal bottles. I love this. You guys know that we even once had a sponsor for this podcast that promoted the idea of not wasting so much plastic so that people could have clean drinking water. So I'm excited. I'm also excited to be bringing you yet another edition of the longest running poker strategy podcast in the history of all mankind. This is amazing. I know Derek just celebrated 10 years streaming on Twitch. Congratulations, KB. I'm here in Vegas. I've only played one event so far. We're going to do a few hands from that event today. I still don't have a golden passport. I have one more chance to get one in a milestone satellite later today. All right, so it's been a while, guys. I have been having a lot of guests on the podcast. We had Alex Fitzgerald, Nikki Limo, Derek Killingbird Tenbush, and now it's time for you and me to recenter and just focus on us, our one-on-one relationship. How have you been? I've missed you. I've missed our quality time together. It's been a while. I want to go back, guys, and look at an online mystery bounty tournament hand that I introduced, I don't know, I guess it was almost a month ago now, the November 15th episode. This time I want to use my favorite poker tool, GTO Wizard. You guys probably won't remember this hand, so let me refresh your memories. It was a $33 mystery bounty with multiple starting days, an online tournament with blinds at 125 and 250. So early on in the tournament, I wasn't doing particularly well. The average stack was 9,000 and my stack was 5,300. So I had 21 big blinds. The action folded to the button and he had us well covered with 11,000 and he made it 500 to go. So he raised the minimum. The small blind folded and I was in the big blind with my 21 big blinds and the Jack of Hearts, 10 of clubs. I decided to make the call. And I remember saying that maybe you could get creative and 3-bet this hand sometimes, but that I really don't. The solver never does. It's a 100% pure call. So at this point, I have to say I give myself an A+ for how I played this hand before the flop. All right, the flop was the ace of clubs, king of diamonds, and I had the Jack of Hearts, 10 of clubs, so 3 to a royal now. I decided to check it, and villain bet 500, so 2 big blinds into 6 big blinds, and I made the call. The solver calls 55% of the time, but the other 45%, it mostly raises to 5 big blinds. So somebody bets 500, and I'm just supposed to make it 1250. Now, that's something I really never do, especially when I'm this short. I don't look for those check raises enough. That's something I've got to start incorporating into my game, both when I have a good bluffing candidate like this one and when I have really strong hands. I mean, this little annoying, basically a min raise, is the sort of play that can invite big mistakes from our opponents. But I just called, which is a 55% play, so I'm still giving myself an A for the hand so far. And at that point, there was about 2,400 in the middle. We had 4,300 in our stack, and the turn was a gorgeous queen of hearts giving me a straight. I decided to check, and villain checked behind. Now, on me, the solver says we want to check 97 of the time, and the rest of the time just bet 3 big blinds. So like 750 into 2,400, so about a third of the pot. But yeah, it's a 97% check, so we're doing great. And then the river was the 7 of spades, and here's where I thought I did something unusual. I bet 4,300 all in into the 2365 pot. Pretty big overbet there, and I'm not really sure what I was hoping to get called by, but I actually did get called by ace-queen offsuit. You guys remember this hand now? So in this spot, this is a mix with solver doing the exact play that I did, the overbet shove, the majority of the time, 53% of the time. But the rest is a mix with 32% of the time, a 1 big blind bet. So we're talking, there's 2365 in the middle, and we bet 250. So that's something else I need to start incorporating into my play, because, just betting a tenth of the pot is not a big part of how I approach the game of No Limit Hold'em tournaments. But you can see that when you have a nutted hand like I have here, of course, the board is paired, so possibly we could be losing. But yeah, I think that 1 big blind bet might be just annoying enough to get certain types of opponents to try to bluff raise me off of whatever I have. And then I can either shove or call, depending on what I think is going on. And so, yeah, I obviously have a lot to learn, but I'm pretty happy with the GTO Wizard answers, basically confirming that I played this particular hand pretty well. And if you want to get better at poker, I recommend GTO Wizard very highly. Look, guys, the holidays are coming up. They're a sponsor. If you want to keep getting this podcast week in and week out, one way to support is by supporting those companies that support us, such as GTO Wizard. It's a great tool. You can train yourself to get better at poker. You can plug in your hands. You can upload hands that you played on online poker sites, and the wizard will start to look for flaws in your game. They have new features each and every day. They're constantly improving the product, and I recommend it so highly. If you want to see for yourself, click the link in the description of this podcast, and just by clicking that link, you can gain 24 hours unlimited access to all of GTO Wizard's features. And then when you're ready to buy, you'll save 10% off your first purchase because you clicked our affiliate link, which again is gtowizard.com/p/TPE. All right, guys, let's talk now about what I've been doing since I got to fabulous Las Vegas. I've been playing in something called WPT Prime Championship. This is an $1,100 buy-in with 4 starting days and unlimited re-entries. They guaranteed $5 million in prizes for a 1K, and that's pretty sick. But even sicker is the fact that they got almost $9 million in that prize pool by the time all was said and done. So let's look at a couple of hands that I played in this $1,100 Prime Championship. I'm going to go through these kind of quickly today. I think you guys like that format. You can kind of play along with me. Early on, level 2, the blinds were 200 and 300 with a 300 ante, and the cutoff opened to 600. Now, he was an Indian guy in his 40s, very jovial, fun-loving guy, very social. He's definitely playing way too many hands, and I'm not surprised to see him open from the cutoff. I have lost a few pots early, and my 40,000 starting stack is down to 32,000. But again, the blinds are only 200, 300, so we've got over 100 times the big blind in the stack. Now, this gentleman's got closer to 60K, so he's loving his life and feeling good about himself early on in this big tournament. So I look down at the King of Hearts, Jack of Spades on the button. And if you want to fold, I don't have a problem with that. I'm going to get involved here. And the reason why is because I believe that my opponent is playing way too many hands. So I'm going to widen my 3-betting range in order to exploit that mistake that I believe he's making. Okay? If you want to call, I'm not a big fan of that play. I think that calling in position with King-Jack offsuit is not as good as 3-betting. In fact, I'd rather fold than call. And the reason why is because you really don't want to see a multi-way flop with this hand. And if I just call, then I'm kind of inviting at least a big blind, if not both blinds, to come along for the ride. I also kind of have to make a hand here. I don't know. I'm just going to be guessing. If I don't take the lead in this hand before the flop, I'm going to be guessing post-flop, and I'll probably make more mistakes in that position than if I just kind of take the bull by the horns. 3-betting, I get a chance to possibly win the whole pot without a flop anyway. And then also, if I call, I'm setting up one of the blinds to possibly employ the squeeze play, which would definitely work, at least against my hand, if not against the original raisers. So with all that in mind, I decided to 3-bet. I make it 2,000, so a pretty chunky 3-bet. He made it 600. We said 2K, and the blinds did fold, and the cutoff calls. So now with 4,800 in the middle, the flop comes Jack of diamonds, 10 of hearts, 6 of clubs. So Jack 10, 6, rainbow, hero with top pair and a king kicker. And to my great surprise, opponent checks. I'm not really sure what to make of this. He usually c-bets, but maybe it's just too wet of a board. I thought maybe he could have pocket 7s, pocket 8s, or maybe like a suited connector below 10s, and he's just about to give up on this hand. But just in case he wants to play, I decided to bet a little bigger than I might otherwise decide to bet. And this is another exploit, guys. If you notice that your opponents are too loose and they go too far with too many hands, the adjustments that you want to make are building bigger pots in position versus those opponents pre-flop. And then when you do make a hand against them, you want to bet more often and you want to bet bigger. So whereas I might normally bet like 1,500 into 4,800, this time I bet 2,500, so about 50% instead of 30% of the pot. And these bets over the long run add up quite a bit. My opponent called, and I was pretty happy about that. The turn came the 8 of diamonds, so our board is now Jack of diamonds, 10 of hearts, 6 of clubs, 8 of diamonds. Now this card brings not only a flush draw, but also completes a few straights, 9, 7, and queen 9. I was also a little concerned about pocket 7s, pocket 8s, so for a lot of reasons, I'm not crazy about this card. Opponent checks to me again, and this time, even though I just said I wasn't crazy about this card, I know that the best way to accumulate chips against very loose opponents is to value bet relentlessly. And so even though I don't love this card, that's not going to stop me from trying to get value for my hand. So I put in 4,000 into 9,800, and I'm hoping to get called by a turned flush draw or a combo draw, something like 9-8, something like that would be really fun. This guy could even have queen 8, so he's got like a gut shot and a pair now, so he could, call me with that. So there are a lot of hands I can get value from. Therefore, I am betting my top pair once again. And to my surprise, my opponent check raised to 12,500. So what should we do with our King Jack in this spot? I don't know. I mean, I wasn't too happy about it, but something told me that I really don't want to fold versus this fellow, at least not yet. So I made the call. I called the 12-5, and now the river comes the 4 of diamonds, completing the flush and another pretty unlikely straight, and my opponent checks. Do we want to value bet a pair of jacks here? My answer is no. I mean, this spot is plenty big for the strength of my hand, and I really don't know what's going on, what check raises on the turn and then gives up on the river. I thought my hand was probably good, but I just didn't want to put any more chips in. So I checked behind, and my opponent turned over the ace of diamonds, 10 of spades for just second pair and one important nut blocker. So yeah, I'm really not crazy about how my opponent plays this hand. I think if you check raise the turn, you have to shove the river, and that certainly would have worked against my exact holding, but it also would have worked against most of my range. I mean, I really just can't keep calling. That 4 of diamonds does complete the flush, and I think that there could be some check raises with flush draws in opponent's shoes. I don't think that second pair is ever supposed to be a check raise, but obviously we will check and see what GTO Wizard has to say about this hand on a future episode. So let's skip ahead to level 8. I was cruising along. I had about 60,000 in my stack when level 8 came along, at which time the blinds were 500 and 1K with a 1K big blind ante. And a foreigner, a European guy that was pretty aggressive and pretty competent actually, opens for 2,300 from the cutoff position, and it folds all the way to me in the big blind with the ace of clubs, 10 of hearts. Now this guy is one of the chip leaders in the tournament. He's got about 130,000 at this point in the flight, and it was actually only 51 or 52K at this point for the average stack. So he was doing great, and I was also above average myself, so we were both doing well in the tournament. What would you do with ace 10 offsuit facing an open from the cutoff from this opponent? With about 60 big blinds effective, I think it's okay to just call and see a flop. I want to be able to have some maneuverability after the flop. I definitely think that there are some 3-bets with this hand, but I'm sure that calling is also okay. That's what I did. And the flop comes king of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 8 of spades. So king, 10, 8, and we've got the ace of clubs, 10 of hearts for middle pair. I decided to check. Opponent fired 3K into the 6K pot, so 50% there. I don't see any reason to go crazy with this hand. I mean, I obviously can't fold. I think calling is best here. We've got a really good bluff catcher and not much more. And at this point in the hand, I really didn't want to build a bigger pot against a relatively tough opponent. So I called, and now with 12,000 in the middle, the turn comes the 6 of hearts. So our board is now king, 10, 8, 6, Badoogie, and I decided to check again. And now my opponent thinks about it for about 10 or 15 seconds and checks behind. So he takes the free card on the river, and that card was the 4 of spades. King, 10, 8, 6, 4, and action is on me. Well, let me tell you what I was thinking at this point. I felt like if my opponent had a king, he probably would have fired again on the 6 of hearts turn card. I know that there is no flush draw available for him to worry about, but with all of these gut shots everywhere, and even an open ender if I have queen jack available, I think that he would mostly bet the turn and mostly check behind on the river with a king if he felt that the pot had been blown to big enough proportions by then. So when he checked it back, I felt like his range was mostly pairs below kings, as well as maybe hands like ace jack and ace queen, no pair that tried it on the flop and now haven't gotten anything and they gave up. I really started to feel like I had a value bet here. Like if he's got a hand like pocket nines, a 10 with a worse kicker, queen 10, jack 10, hands like that, maybe ace queen for the nut no pair, although I do block that hand with my ace. I just felt like it was a value bet and I needed to entice him with good sizing. So I put in 5,000 into the 12K pot and he called rather quickly, and I turned over ace 10 triumphantly and he mucked. So I don't know what he called me with, but I was really happy that I was able to find that little value bet. Once you get into that rhythm of checking and checking and checking, it's easy to kind of just auto check on the river. But here's a spot where whatever he had was good enough to call, but probably not good enough to bet if I had checked again. So if I had checked, I still would have won the pot. The pot would have been 5,000 smaller, and we don't want that. When you have the best hand, or what might be the best hand, you should try to get value for it one way or the other. And it just didn't feel like my opponent was going to bluff me. So I took a hand that on the flop was a bluff catcher, and on the river, I turned it into thin value. So this is actually one of my favorite hands that I've played all year long, and it was actually written up on the World Poker Tour website. So you can check my Twitter and see the hand in all of its glory there, although at one point there's a mistake where the author of the update calls my opponent the big blind, but I was surely the big blind in this one. All right, let's do one more quick hand here. The very next level, the blinds were 600 and 1,200 with a 1,200 big blind ante, so there's 3K, in the pot while the cards are being dealt. And there's a player who limps in under the gun. Now, he is obviously a recreational player. Maybe he's going to play in the free roll. I don't know what his deal is, but, older guy, very jovial, super kind and gentle, nice guy, limping in, not really knowing what's going on. He limps in under the gun. And then another foreign player who I thought had maybe an Eastern European, possibly Ukrainian accent, makes it 3,400, which is very small, by the way. The big blind is 1,200, and there's already a limper. I'd like to see him raise it a lot bigger than this, maybe like 5K or 6K would probably be a better sizing, at least live. So, yeah, he's not even at 3X, and there's already a limp. So I think this sizing is a mistake, regardless of what this player has. So this guy makes it 3,400 with 65,000 behind. And then the next player folds, and then in the hijack is just this old Vegas guy. And anyone who's ever been to Venetian has seen this guy a million times. He's probably 65 to 70 years old, but he still thinks he's cool. He's got dark sunglasses on. He's got gray hair. He's got like a Lucky Clover hat on and like a members only jacket. We've all seen this guy. You guys know this guy. He doesn't play like a scared old man. He plays like an old guy who wants everybody to know the old guy still got it. All right, so he makes it 10,000. So he 3-bets to 10,000, and he's got 100,000 in his stack. Jeff Madsen, who's just joined our table, he late-regged, and he's here now. He folds. The Indian guy, from the other hand, folds. And now I'm in the small blind with the Queen of Clubs, Queen of Hearts. So pocket queens facing a limp, a raise, and a re-raise from the small blind. Well, I've got 80,000 in my stack. Do I really want to get 65 times the big blind all in pre-flop versus this action against these opponents? I really don't know what's going on here. I mean, the original raise came from second position, but it was, as I mentioned, very small. The old Vegas guy hasn't really been too far out of line at any point, at least not that I've been made aware of. So I don't know. I just didn't feel comfortable 4-betting with this hand, although maybe that is the play and just trying to get the 65 bigs in there. I don't know, guys. I decided to flat and just kind of play cautiously and see what happens. And I know Andrew Brokus would say that calling is not a compromise, but in this case, folding felt wrong, and so did raising, so I called. The big blind folds, and the original limper folds, and the original raiser folds, even though he was getting a pretty darn good price with whatever he had at that point. I think that fold has to be a mistake. Like, what makes it 34, and then now that there's like over 30,000 in there, can't call like 66 more? Very strange. Very, very strange indeed. But I was happy to be heads up against Mr. Old School Vegas, and the flop comes Jack of Diamonds, 9 of Diamonds, 4 of Clubs. Jack 9, 4, and I have queens with no clubs. I decide to check to the raiser, and he checked behind. Now, this kind of surprised me because I feel like he should have mostly aces, kings, pocket jacks, ace, king in his range, and I think that most of those hands should be betting. Now, it is possible that Mr. Old School Vegas has gotten a little bit out of line and just decided to put in 10,000 for fun with a non-premium hand, but he is over 60, and typically their 3-bets are no joke, which is why I flatted with queens in the first place. So when he checked behind, I put him on ace-king, and so I thought that my queens were probably good. And then the turn came the 10 of hearts. So the board is now Jack of Diamonds, 9 of Diamonds, 4 of Clubs, 10 of Hearts. We've got Queen of Clubs, Queen of Hearts, and I didn't want to check again. I don't want to give him a free card to beat me. Now he can win with any ace, king, or queen if he's got the hand that I think he has. So I just want to try to get a little bit of value from that hand. At this point, there's 27,000-ish in the middle, and I decided to bet 8,000, right around 30%, and he called rather quickly. So I was pretty happy to get that action, and now I'm just thinking, no ace, no queen. The river comes the King of Diamonds, And that card gives me a straight, but it also puts 3 to the flush on the board. And I checked one more time. I think there is a case to be made for just betting my straight on the river, trying to get action from a hand like ace-king that just doesn't want to bet because everything got there and it's only one pair and there's a possible straight and a possible flush and a possible everything. So yeah, maybe another small bet on the river is the way to go. But as played, I checked and my opponent bets 34,000 into the pot of 44,000. And I don't know what to do. I just called. I don't really think we can check raise. Maybe he has ace queen somehow. Maybe he has 2 diamonds somehow. I guess that would probably be ace queen of diamonds. Ace 10 of diamonds is also possible, I suppose. But yeah, I was just having trouble thinking about, why is he betting so big? He's really polarizing himself. Obviously, I can't fold a straight, so I call, and he turns over the ace of spades, 10 of clubs. So if you're keeping score at home, 2 of the 3 hands we reviewed today, my opponents went absolutely bonkers with ace 10 offsuit. And that'll do it for this episode. Guys, if you're out here in Vegas, hit me up on Twitter at Clayton Comic or get after me in the TPE Discord and let me know that you're in town. I'd love to see some of you. Maybe have a drink or at least shake your hand and say hello. And for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Lock in intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read my, can't